Okay. So it says they're having trouble streaming to Instagram, Donna. Donna, if you're there, try to see what's going on with Instagram. Yeah. Okay. So we're just about ready. Okay. And Kenny should be joining us in a moment. So happy Thanksgiving. I'm here to do a Thanksgiving live stream for Can I Say That at the Thanksgiving table? Because I can't believe it, but Thanksgiving is already just about a week away. And there's always this big question that people have about, well, what about, free speech at the dinner table? And, I just want to say that there's obviously a difference between free speech in the legal sense, like we're legally permitted to say whatever we want at the Thanksgiving dinner table, at least for now, for those of us who are in the United States. Um, but if I see we have a few people joining already, which is awesome. So if you guys want to drop a comment and say where you are you in a place that celebrates Thanksgiving? Sorry, I'm trying to center myself up here in the frame for vertical. I'm so excited. I see more people joining. So we're talking about Can I Say That at the Thanksgiving dinner table? And Kenny Zhu is here. I'm super excited. I'm going to bring him right in. Hi, Kenny. Happy Thanksgiving in advance for Can I Say That
Hey,
at the Thanksgiving dinner table?
hey, Dr. Chloe, good to be here. Always
Yeah,
happy to participate with
awesome. Well, I'm so glad to hear that. So, Kenny, you
you.
are a little bit frozen just for a moment. Good. I'm so glad you came back. So, for people that may know me but may not know the amazing Kenny Zhu, he is a New York Times bestselling author, and he really spearheaded an incredible free speech discussion, spearheading leading Students for Fair Admissions to the Supreme Court. This is the Harvard case that, and I know different people have different opinions, and that's okay because we like free speech here. But Kenny was amazing at bringing basically an end to race based affirmative action. So, Kenny, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, I mean, I was an author and a speaker. I didn't actually sue the university. Edward Bloom did. All credit goes to him for that. But I was a major part of it for sure because my book, An Inconvenient Minority, really helped a lot of people, enlightened a lot of people in that conversation.
Yeah, I knew you were going to be like ridiculously modest about this, Kenny. So I just have to say again, it is amazing. Kenny's amazing book, An Inconvenient Minority, really opened my eyes about a lot of things. And then, Kenny really was instrumental in bringing this to the Supreme Court. And I know it was, Ed Bloom, and, I'm not saying that Kenny did it single-handedly, but he was really, really, really important in that. So all respect to you for that. But so for today, we're talking about free speech at the Thanksgiving dinner table, right? Or just free speech in general, what we're grateful for when it comes to free speech or things that maybe we used to be afraid to say. I personally went through a big journey with that. I used to really watch my mouth in public a lot more than I do now. So Kenny, I'm curious for you. Did you used to keep some of those points that you had in an inconvenient minority to yourself and then decided to be more outspoken about them?
Yeah, it was over a period of 7 or 8 years that the issues were just milking in my head, just like kind of like a dirty glass of milk. Um, and I just couldn't get over the fact that this is racial discrimination against Asians. It's not being called out. I couldn't get over the fact that the low that Harvard was blaming Asians for it. You know, they were saying they had low personality scores. Um, they were just like they would choose to character assassinate us over admitting us based on like the things that we actually submit to the university. You know, and that cuts deep at a deeper level than just, oh, this is bad because I didn't get into this university. Like that is symbolic of society. That is symbolic of the society that we want to avoid. We don't want to have prejudice in anything. So I started to write about it. I started to tweet about it. I used my active Twitter account to start tweeting about it. But I'll tell you, like, I just kind of just posted on this issue for like 2 years without anything. And then I started writing articles about it on these minor websites. And eventually it bubbled up just in time for my book to release. So I had a little luck there, but it definitely came from a lacuna of work underneath.
And then your book, you became a New York Times bestselling author with that book. Is that right?
Yeah.
That is,
Best-selling author for sure.
yeah, I mean, that's incredible. And I'm just curious, like within your own family, because one of the things that we are talking about here with this live stream and free speech is around Thanksgiving. And in some levels, it's, we can talk about how we're thankful for free speech, but also we're talking about how I personally think a diversity of opinions is really important and being able to express them even around the Thanksgiving dinner table. Like, to be honest, everybody has different opinions. And again, I'm here for it if people want to put in the comments what they think. But I think that telling people that they cannot talk about politics at the Thanksgiving dinner table is like putting people in a verbal straitjacket, because I think, like, when we think about the etymology of the word politics, it just means public life. So that means we can't talk about our opinions about any current events, essentially, like, which feels
Uh-huh.
to me really stifling. So, Kenny, what's that like at your Thanksgiving dinner table? Because I know that your family probably has a diversity of opinions.
Oh boy. I mean, my free speech has gotten me in trouble with my family more times than I could imagine. Particularly
Uh-huh.
the younger members of my family, my sister. Um, and I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to be honest with you. It hasn't been entirely resolved. It hasn't been entirely resolved yet. I tried, there's a certain point where it's like, it doesn't matter if you keep your opinions to yourself at the dinner table or not. Like people know who you are. And if they are a certain disposition, if they're a certain way, they're going to hate you for it anyways. So the reality is, as a human being, you just have to make a choice. You have to make a choice to live with yourself. And so much about free speech, and what I'm thankful for is that we get to make the choice to live with ourselves, and that's what I believe in.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm so glad you're sharing that it hasn't been totally resolved. And, you know, I mean, I think it's fine, of course, like that people don't have things totally resolved. But what I don't like is that you said, and I don't mean I dislike what you for saying it, but I dislike the reality of what you're saying, which is that family members will quote hate you for it, for, just viewpoints. And I that's part of what I'm hoping to resolve in my book, is that I think that a lot of the times that people say like, "Hey, I hate you for your viewpoint," because the irony, right, is that usually they're people that are like, "I'm pushing for diversity and inclusion, and so therefore I hate you for your viewpoint," right? Um,
Mhm.
my hope is to help them understand that if they really care about, mental health and truly safe spaces, that those are spaces where people can have a diversity of viewpoints and that they can disagree, but that they don't have to hate each other. Like even in my book, I talk about people in the KKK or jihadi recruiters, the way that they even leave those harmful ideologies is not by someone telling them, "I hate you for your viewpoint, shut up." It's actually by someone dialoguing with them that those people even come to, see things differently. Um, but yeah, I mean, maybe I should send a case of my books to your Thanksgiving dinner table, because I want everybody to know that that we can disagree agreeably. You know, we can. I'm so sorry though. Like that sticks in my head, Kenny, that you said that you feel like sometimes they quote hate you for that for the viewpoints. Because I don't think
Well,
you have
and
any
partially it's
viewpoints
a
that
result of
are
my own
sacred.
tactics. Like,
Oh,
you know, I've chosen to become this. Like, I've chosen to do this. I take responsibility for my life. I just learn to live with myself for it because the consequences you don't always see. But I think if you state what you believe very clearly and boldly, and you take the hit, you take the initial hit, and then people realize that they can't rattle you just because they hit you back,
mhm.
then you're standing up
Mhm.
to bullies. And I think that that's an essential thing that every American has to learn.
That's a
Um,
really big one, Kenny. I just want to pause and highlight that. So, very importantly, you're saying that you refuse to be intimidated, and that right there puts a lot of the issues in check of people who think that they can just bulldoze you into silence or bulldoze you into agreeing with them just by saying, "Well, you that's what you think, this is what I think," and just by refusing to back down, that's a big help.
yeah, yeah,
That's huge.
um, yeah.
And then you went I'm curious too, you said you went from this stage of having your ideas kind of, and for people that are joining, I'm on with, I believe, New York Times bestselling author Kenny Xu, who wrote the amazing book An Inconvenient Minority, which, was instrumental in the Supreme Court case, overturning affirmative action, race-based affirmative action at Harvard. And Kenny has to teach a history class in a few minutes, so I'm gonna try to just go over this one point again of his because I think it's so interesting of how Kenny went from holding his viewpoints inside of him to literally writing a book about them. How did you learn how to come out of the closet about stuff that you knew would be unpopular at first?
I think that there's a great deal of faith that I place in God for sure, because I know that I'm not being judged by people ultimately, but I'm being judged by God. And I think that anybody who comes out, I mean, anybody who comes out and says something unpopular, perceived to be unpopular, it's actually not unpopular. It's actually a very popular position, but people don't have the language to articulate it. Like, you have to realize you are providing a service to humanity by providing them the language to articulating it. So you have to have a bigger vision of yourself than just yourself. Let's put it that way.
Wow, there's so much there, Kenny. I think you're right. You know what? That's one of the things I actually talk a little bit about in the book too, is there's a technique called thought replacements for people that get
Mhm.
scared of speaking up. And one of the thought replacements that I mention, is something to the effect of, by speaking up, I'm making it easier for other people to use their voice. So I think that's a really big one. And then it's interesting you link it to God because, of course, in our US Constitution, we talk about these as God-given rights. And so you're thinking about something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly think that that's the principles that founded our country for sure. God-given rights, and God-given rights to free speech. Like, being under the protection of God means that you can speak truth to power. Like, your voice does matter. It is important that you have a responsibility to the truth. The truth isn't subjective. There is a reality, and I have to go now, but
Yeah.
that is the reality that I believe.
Yeah. So, Kenny, thank you so much for joining. Kenny mentioned in advance he's about to teach a 2-hour history class. Super interesting. Kenny, thank you for taking the time to join for a few minutes and sharing about this because I really think you're a free speech champion. So, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, and please invite me on anytime.
I
Um,
will. Thanks again.
okay, bye.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving. So, what an amazing blessing that was to be joined by New York Times bestselling author Kenny Xu. And, as he was discussing there, of course, he's like super humble and modest, but he wrote this amazing book, An Inconvenient Minority, where he kind of unpacked the reasons why race based affirmative action was actually not creating fairness, that it was actually interfering with fairness. And that was a really bold thing for him to do. So if people do want to share as well, in the comments, I'm curious to know where you are, because we're framing this as a Thanksgiving, live stream about free speech, about why we're grateful for free speech, or I'm also curious about if there's things that you used to be afraid to speak up about that now, you will speak up about, because I definitely went through a big journey about that myself. I used to hide a lot of things that I thought would be politically incorrect because, there is a little bit of a power game that goes on in academia or in the media or, just various places. And then it causes people to just, say, well, hey, maybe it's risk reward here. What's the point of me, going against what I'm being told to think, whether it be like, by media or by academia. And, when I started speaking out, for me, the breaking point was masking little children back in COVID. As a clinical psychologist, I was like, wait a minute, I have to speak up about this. And then when I did start speaking up about it, I just came to realize that it on a cognitive level was important. Like it was sharpening my thought process. Like it was helping on an emotional level, and my relationships were getting deeper. I mean, haven't we all had that when we talk about something, openly, it's very stimulating. It can be cognitively stimulating. One of the other things that I've been thinking about lately, and, maybe this is, gonna sound controversial, and I'm curious what other people might think about it, is and it's not even honestly just lately, I've been thinking about it for years, but I'm only recently, feeling bold enough to talk about it. But I'm wondering why it's okay to have, say, women's affinity groups at professional workplaces and school places, but it's not okay to have men's affinity groups, right? Like, how come we can have women in medicine, or the women in law, or the young women's leadership committee or whatever, but we can't have the same exact type of committee or affinity group, for men. Okay, we've got an important guest here. I'm going to add him to the stage. We've got Jim McCann. Hey, Jim, how are you? Jim, I just want to give you a quick intro. This is Jim McCann. He is the founder of 1-800-Flowers. And I love that Jim McCann is bold enough to come and join a live stream about free speech. So welcome, Jim.
Nice to be with you, Dr. Chloe.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. So, one of the things that we're just talking about, and I know you just have a few minutes, so I just want to, get right to it. And some of the questions and things we're talking about are either what are you most grateful for when it comes to free speech? Or is there something that you used to feel like you had to kind of muzzle yourself about, but now you will speak up a little bit more? Or anything else that you want to say about free speech?
Well, I think your book is terrific, Dr. Chloe.
Thank
Uh,
you.
it's shaped how I think about a bunch of things, and it's caused some interesting conversations for my family and I as recently as last night. So you, not surprisingly, you're having a big and positive impact on us and our lives. But you've done that for years now. But we
Thank
had a
you.
conversation last night. We had an event in Manhattan, in New York City, for our Smile Farms charity, and I had a chance to have a conversation with two of my grandchildren who were there, two of the two oldest, 17 and 13, and we're talking about lessons they learned in school recently. And when I have an opportunity to do a podcast like yours or our own, I'm reminded of a situation that we talked about last night. There's a lady here on Long Island. Her name is Edith Gross. And one of our producer engineers was asked to do a freelance exercise. And what that was Edith, who is 96 years old, went and spoke with our high school seniors, an audience of high school seniors, about 15 of them. And Jordan, the fellow I mentioned, was asked to videotape it. And what it turns out, Dr. Chloe, is it was the first time she ever spoke about her experience as a child. And you can't imagine a much more horrific experience as a child. She grew up in Hungary, a Jew. When the Nazis invaded Hungary, they took her, and she survived 2 different concentration camps, the first being
Wow.
Auschwitz. And Jordan was so moved by this story that he suggested I should sit down and have a conversation with her for our podcast. But he didn't tell me anything about her. And she told me her story. And I'm telling you, I was riveted for 90 minutes. Goosebumps just listening to this little tiny lady's story of terror and horror.
Wow.
But she hadn't told the story before because after the war, she walked from the Netherlands back to Hungary with a few other people. Can you imagine?
No.
After experiencing that for years. I think she was 3 years in 2 different camps. And the horrors of it all. And I won't go into that because I want to touch on what you've unlocked here in the conversation. She never told her story because she married when she finally got to the U.S., had a family, her husband passed away. She met another gentleman 8 years later, and they fell in love and married. And he had just died a year and a half ago before she told her story. And he didn't ever want her to tell her story because he didn't want it to be how she was defined. And I suppose how he was defined as well. So she didn't. And then after he passed, she was sitting and having a conversation with her rabbi. And her rabbi told her, Edith, it's important for you to share your story. And he convinced her over a period of a few months to do that. And that high school class that she spoke to was the first time. And I was blessed to hear her story just a second time she had told it. But what it tells us is that we can, and I went to the most extreme, of course, but we all have little stories. And if you make them stories and package them, you've written a lot about shame and how shame is a crippling emotion. And you've taught us how to package that, how to overcome that. Sometimes you talk about how do you make a joke of it so that you can own it and share and shape your story. But I think the lesson I learned listening to Edith and seeing what a beautiful life she led, that she has several generations now. In fact, Small World Story, we had an intern class here this summer, which as we do every summer. And the tallest of them, now Edith is not 5 foot tall. And the tallest of our interns must have been 6'4", 6'5", string bean of a young man, nice kid. He tells me on the last day, on graduation day of the intern program, that Edith is his great-grandmother. And we didn't know that the whole summer.
Wow.
But she's had this beautiful family, and she's been overcoming the worst of tragedies, finally now sharing her story, and she's regularly now speaking, and crowds are flocking to her to learn how to tell your story, how to own your story, and how to make it a positive for you and for the other people you get to share your stories with. So she lived a life of love in spite of the fact that she experienced the worst of humankind. And I was moved by that, and it just, you can make it the simple little things that you and I have spoken about before. But I think the story of Edith is own your story, make it a force for good. If it's a horrible story, tell the story and tell how it shaped your life. And when you get to a time of the year like this, Dr. Chloe, when we're thinking about the things we're grateful for, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to hear her story face to face. And it was just a life-changing moment for me. And I have that conversation with 2 of my grandkids recently. That was my gift. My gift was sharing Edith's gift. And conversation and sharing are the keys to healthy and positive relationships. And Edith has taught us, all of us, that story.
Wow. Jim, my goodness, you here have shared an amazing story. And in just a few minutes, you've really,
How lucky are we?
yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, that story it hits on so many levels, as you said, how lucky are we, that we didn't have to go through what Edith went
But
through.
we get to know people like that and learn and emote with them without having to
Yeah.
have the horror experience, of course, but that we just have people like that around us that we can tap into. How lucky
Yeah.
are we?
Yeah, I mean, so for people that may just be joining, I'm here for a moment or two more with Jim McCann, who's the founder of 1-800-Flowers. And he just shared an amazing story from last night about free speech, really about sitting with a woman that, is in her 90s that somewhat recently only began sharing about her experience being taken to two different concentration camps, one of them Auschwitz, as a little girl, and she, for certain reasons, was guided to not share and not talk about her story for much of her life, and recently began doing that. And I mean, Jim, did she happen to ever discuss what it was like for her to make the difference of holding it in to speaking out about that and how that affected her?
She said it's what causes her to fight to stay healthy and go on because she feels that she has a gift to share with so many other people.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I honestly just get chills with that. And it is true when we can talk about our experiences. That's one of the things I discuss in the book is it helps us to emotionally regulate, but it also helps us to, obviously to rapidly exchange information and ideas with other people. It's one of our very unique gifts of language. And anthropologists and scientists have speculated that that's how we evolved into such a sophisticated society, because we have these abilities to have intergenerational learning and deep and nuanced information and stories. And Jim, I could keep you all day, but I know your team warned me that, of course, Jim, being the founder of 1-800-Flowers, has an incredibly packed day. So I'm thankful that you joined us to share and to speak for a few minutes, and I'll honor your time. I won't keep you longer than we planned, but I'd love to keep you all day.
Dr. Chloe, you're a gift to us all, and one of the things I'm thankful for is that we were introduced several years ago, and we become friends, and that's a gift I treasure.
Same here, Jim. Thank you so much again for getting on for a moment and sharing that amazing story, and wishing all the best to you and your family and to Edith.
Happy Thanksgiving, Dr. Chloe.
Thanks. You too, Jim. Take care. Bye-bye. So, thanks. Wow, that was an incredible story about the layers of free speech. Honestly, that was a lot for me to even just process. And I feel like, oh, thank you. Somebody just popped up and said she liked my book. Thank you so much, Adeline. Oh, I think I see that one. So thank you so much for that comment. And I hope you put that on Amazon too. If y'all have not reviewed the book on Amazon, but you've read it, by all means, please do, because that really helps it a lot there. But Jim's story hit me there on a lot of different levels, and it reminded me too about the importance of processing speech. So people are sometimes surprised to know that in part 2 of the book, where all the techniques are, the first section of techniques are naturally about speaking up, which is not a surprise for a book called Can I Say That? But there's also a lot of techniques for listening, because it can be quite overwhelming sometimes to listen to really intense stuff. And what Jim was sharing, it wasn't even disagreeable for me. It was just emotionally intense. But when people are sharing stuff that we disagree with, which is actually really important, that we are exposed to information and ideas that we disagree with. We really want to have a diversity of viewpoints, but that can actually be sometimes the most challenging time to listen, right? I sometimes compare it to, like, if you're at the gym, you want to push yourself, but it's when you're really maxing out on how much weight you can lift and your muscles are shaking, and that's when it's most unpleasant, but that's actually when, you're growing the most. And one of the facts that I learned as I was researching for this book about listening is that when our heart rate goes above 100 beats per minute, we actually cognitively have a more difficult time processing what's being said to us, right? Which I think is really profound. That piece of research came from the Gottmans, Gottmans. They're kind of like the gold standard of couples therapy, researchers and practitioners. And so naturally, with couples, one of the things that they've had to learn about is how couples can better sort out conflicts. And some of the techniques from the Gottmans and the research from the Gottmans I think are really applicable to the free speech conversation, which is how can we navigate conflict with people, but still remain in dialogue? Getting back to, can I say that at the Thanksgiving dinner table? And when we hold things inside too much, maybe supposedly just to keep the peace, that's what we think we're doing. But what we're really doing in that case is actually oftentimes creating distance. And not that we have to say everything to everyone all the time. Again, there is such a thing, as I discuss in the book, as healthy self restraint. It's good to have a little bit of a filter. But the death knell in marriages when they're really headed for divorce is actually not when there's a lot of arguments. It's actually when there's a stony silence and people have stopped bothering to try to talk to each other. So that's why I think there's a lot we can learn from couples therapy about the free speech conversation, about how we can, you know, be close with each other, have friends and family that may think and believe very passionately, very differently from us, right? How can we not only keep it peaceful, but maybe even actually learn from each other and actually have true intimacy? To me, true intimacy is not really, well, we just never go beyond a surface level. We just keep things very, quote, pleasant, because we know if we talk about anything real at the Thanksgiving dinner table, we would just start screaming at each other, right? We don't, to me, that's not truly a safe space. That's not truly peace. Somebody said something once about how, peace is, it's not just the absence of fighting. It's about, the presence of trust or something like that. And I can't remember the exact quote, but if anybody does, by all means, please go ahead and put it into the comments. So I am having a couple more guests that will be joining, so I'm excited for that. Let me just check my calendar and see who's coming on. In a little while, we'll have New York Times bestseller Dave Kirpin, and we will also have Shamika Michelle. Shamika Michelle, if you're not aware of her, she is super incredibly outspoken. I feel like we could all learn a million things from Shamika Michelle about speaking up. And Dave Kirpin has actually also come a big way in terms of speaking up. So he actually recently ran for office, and he's a serial entrepreneur who has, you know, become very interested in the social conversations that we're all having these days. But I see that we have some people here for sure on the live stream. So I encourage you to comment, because I really want to know, where are you located? What are your thoughts about free speech? Are you nervous or interested about your Thanksgiving dinner table conversations? If you are having a Thanksgiving dinner table, maybe depending on where you are located, maybe you do or don't celebrate Thanksgiving, or maybe for whatever reason, you're not having Thanksgiving. But even if you're not having Thanksgiving, I want to know about what free speech is like in your life. How outspoken are you in your life? Do you hold a lot of things back in your life, or do you tend to be really outspoken? How do you feel about it when people are outspoken with you? Do you appreciate it? I frankly do. I'd like to know what people are really thinking. But I know for other people, maybe they say, well, why can't they just keep that stuff to themselves, right? So everybody's different. I just want to make that super clear. You don't have to agree with me, but I would be still very interested just to know what people think and feel about this subject. So while we're waiting for the next guest to join, I'm just going to go over a few things about the mental health benefits of free speech. So there's cognitive, emotional, and social benefits to free speech. And all of this cognitive, emotional, and social adds up to free speech is good for mental health. And the reason I want people to know that is because I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this myself in the past, is that we think, "Oh, well, it would be better if I just didn't say anything that could bother or offend anybody because I want to be careful of other people's feelings." And to a certain degree, that makes sense. But there is a tipping point where by holding ourselves back too much, we stop being authentic with people, which is really not good for our mental health or for theirs. It's almost like the Truman Show, I think it was, with Jim Carrey, where he didn't know it, but he was living in a TV set where nobody was really being real with him. And I think when we all get too afraid of cancel culture sometimes, it's almost like we put ourselves into some kind of a Truman Show episode where everybody's just, parroting whatever they think is the safe and correct talking point to say, even if it's not what they really think. Kenny Zhu talked about that quite a bit, that before he wrote his amazing book, An Inconvenient Minority, which, ended up making it all the way to the Supreme Court. He held back a lot of his views. So when we are real with people, what it does is it sharpens our cognitive process. Oh, I see we've got some comments coming in. I'm just going to add some of those comments onto the screen, which is awesome. Thank you so much for that. Of course, I love that comment. But if other people want to drop their comments, by all means, let me know, where you are and what you think about free speech. And if there's anything that you sometimes hold back about, or that you used to hold back about, but now you don't, let me know where you are at geographically, but also let me know where you're at in terms of the free speech conversation. So anyway, back to the mental health benefits of free speech. So, on a cognitive side, when we talk things through, it actually stimulates our brain to put things into systems of logic, right? So, haven't we all had the experience where as we say something aloud, we're like, oh, as I say that aloud, it reminds me of such and such. And it's, through putting things into words. And the same thing can happen as well when we're writing. We've all, maybe those of us who journal, have had a situation where we said, oh, I don't really have anything to say. There's really nothing on my mind. But, I'm just going to do this exercise where I'm going to fill up a page with words, just to fill up a page. It's something from a wonderful book called The Artist's Way. But even if you just want to try journaling and you don't know where to start, it can be helpful to just tell yourself that you have to fill up a page. And once you start, it's incredible. When you start with that first sentence or two, oftentimes it just unlocks this whole cascade of thoughts and feelings and things like that. So once we start using that gift of language, there's a whole region of our brain that's just devoted, it's called Wernicke's area of the brain, that's just devoted to the production of speech. Maybe I'm getting it backwards. Nope, I'm not. And then Broca's area is about understanding, is about comprehending speech. And it's interesting that we have these regions of our brain that are specifically devoted to the production and the comprehension of language. It's that innate to us. It's like literally in our DNA that we need to speak, we need to listen. In my research for the book, I also learned that the psycholinguist from Harvard, Steven Pinker, said that, oh, I see we have another comment coming in, which is awesome. So I'll put that up in a moment. Steven Pinker said that humans need to speak the way that spiders need to spin webs. Like it's just that automatic for us. And so when we interfere with our gift of language or with somebody else's gift of language, we might think, oh, well, this is just small. This is just me being polite. But really, it's much bigger than that. It's like as if somebody said, hey, could you stop breathing? Because your breathing offends me, right? We might say, well, I'm sorry, my breathing offends you, but I need to do it. It's part of my well-being. It's very basic to my well-being. And we can pretty much say the same thing about speech. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no such thing as a time, place, and manner restriction, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But let's take a moment for this comment first. Somebody says, free speech is vital to society, and I'm grateful for your bravery in speaking up about it, Dr. Chloe. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'm thankful for the chance to be able to speak up because it's good to speak even if nobody's listening. So, you as I was just talking about with journaling and things like that, language is organizing and it's helpful to us, even if it's just for us in private. But when we do have a community, which is what we have here, and you do have people that are listening to you, really listening to you, your brain can actually really tell the difference. That's another thing I discuss in the book. It's so interesting that when we're truly being listened to, our brain actually responds differently than when someone is just smiling and nodding at us. There's been studies about this, which is again why we may not realize it, but we're actually depriving ourselves and other people of something really important. And our cortisol levels actually drop when we have a true heart to heart with people. So thank you for your comment. I appreciate that you're glad I'm speaking up, but I'm also very glad that you're listening as well. It's great to have it to be a two-way conversation. And of course, I would also ask you try to put that one on Amazon or Target or Walmart, because the more places that we can have positive comments about the book, the more that it gets suggested and brought up to other people as well. So thank you for that. Um, but back to the cognitive and emotional benefits of free speech. So, on an emotional level, when we label our emotions, what happens is our amygdala, the part of the brain that gets active during fear, actually starts to settle down. And that's really important because when the amygdala, the place of fear, becomes more and more and more active, eventually, if we get afraid enough, we might be inclined to act out violently, right? Which is why I think it is so ironic that many people, kind of like what I'll jokingly call the speech police, that they want to put all these big speech codes on people and tell them, well, you can't say this, you can't express that, you can't talk about that because it would be, quote, hateful. What they're trying to do, and I'm, coming from a place of assuming good intentions, is they're trying to cut down on hate speech and bullying. But ironically, when what they're doing is making people stuff down their feelings and preventing them from engaging in emotional regulation by discussing their thoughts and feelings openly. And when we prevent people from discussing their thoughts and feelings openly, as I just said, what we're doing is actually we're making them more prone to act out with violence, to act out with passive aggression, or other forms of hostility. So even though it's counterintuitive to say, well, we might actually have fewer problems with hate speech and bullying by allowing people to have dialogue that is irksome to each other sometimes. It actually is one of our most primary tools for resolving intergroup differences. So, for example, if I'm working with violent offenders as a clinical psychologist, or if I'm working with people that have problems with anger management as a clinical psychologist, one of the first things I want to do is get them to learn how to talk when they are feeling upset, or get them to learn how to listen to somebody saying something that is offensive or bothersome to them, get them to learn how to be in dialogue. We want more dialogue, not less dialogue, in order to reduce hate speech and bullying. It's actually, I've developed what is one of my favorite new little catchphrases now. I think I have to write a blog about it or something, but my new, to express this is violence increases when dialogue ceases. And so again, it's ironic that I think some very well-intentioned people want to try to ban certain types of speech or certain types of ideas because they think that it will create a more harmonious society. Whereas in practice, the exact opposite is true. When we prevent people from talking through their differences, we actually have differences fester, and we become more and more hostile to each other. Ceasing dialogue is actually one of the first steps of communication breakdown, obviously. So let me just take a quick drink here. My mouth's getting dry from all this jabbering. I know we're going to have another guest join soon, which will be awesome. But in the meantime, again, I want to thank you all for joining me for the Thanksgiving live stream about can I say that at the Thanksgiving dinner table? So, if there's things that you're interested in saying at the Thanksgiving dinner table, by all means, feel free to put them in the comments, or if you want to share about your own, free speech journey. Are you somebody that's more outspoken now than you used to be, or somebody that's less outspoken now than you used to be? Or have you pretty much always been the same? I'll tell you, as a kid, I was super outspoken. It never occurred to me to ever worry about expressing pretty much any opinion. And I was actually always pretty interested in politics, so it's not that it never occurred to me that somebody would disagree with me. I was actually a little bit of a nerd, so I would have, like, political arguments on the playground and things like that. Even my very best friend and I as a kid, we were total political opposites, and so but that was fine. We were best friends anyway, and we used to really enjoy, just friendly debate. So I see we've got Dave Kirpin here. I'm gonna bring him on. Hello, it's New York Times bestselling author Dave Kirpin. Thanks so much, Dave, for joining.
Hi, Chloe. Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I tried to share this on Instagram Live, and I couldn't. I don't know if there's something different about the setup, but I just wanted to give you a heads up for Donna if she's watching to make sure that this is shareable on Instagram.
Thank you. Yes, she is watching, so she'll see what she can do on that.
So how's it going? First of all, congratulations on your new book. Can I say that? I'm so excited about it. I haven't been able to read it yet, but I have a copy, obviously, and I will be reading it in greater depth. I reviewed it, obviously ahead of time, but
Thank
I
you.
can't wait to read it cover to cover.
No, thank you so much, Dave, and thanks for joining me. I know that obviously your time is limited and precious, so I want to jump into some of your perspectives on this issue. So one of the things that we're talking about today with Can I Say That at the Thanksgiving dinner table is like either what you're grateful for about free speech or how diverse topics are handled at your Thanksgiving dinner table, or if there's something that you used to be kind of holding back about, but now you become more outspoken about, or anything else that you want to say about free speech.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of free speech, and that's part of why I was excited to join you. And I'm grateful that we live in a country where free speech is allowed. It's very easy sometimes to take for granted just how good we have it, and folks argue about one side. Well, politically, one side wants to cancel free speech. One side, it promotes hate speech, this and that. But the bottom line is, compared to other countries where they don't have free speech, we have it really, really good here, and it's easy to lose sight of that. So first, I just want to say, today is an opportunity to be grateful for the free speech that we have. The other
Amen.
thing I think of, go ahead.
I just said amen.
Amen. The other thing that I think of, Chloe, is how I manage differences of opinion at the Thanksgiving table. I think my brother is a pretty far right conservative, and the rest of us lean a lot more left. And I think in the past we've had significant political disagreements, and I think it can get very uncomfortable when people start talking at each other and not listening. And for me, the key to successful management of speech when we disagree is really, really leaning into listening. listening is in my opinion, the single most important and single most underrated skill in business and in relationships and in life. And if we got better at listening, then it sort of deflects any disagreements. Really, like, so somebody could say, my brother, for instance, could say something very provocative. Let's say about the right to life versus abortion, right? That's a big hot button issue in my family. And if he says that, and it's very provocative, it's easy to react. It's easy to react and sort of go the opposite way and get very angry and heated. And if instead I say something like, wow, it sounds like you feel really strongly about this, and this is something that's really important to you, all of a sudden, it's like there's no argument anymore. It's just respect and listening diffuses any potential argument. So that's I don't know that that's directly related to free speech, but for me, that's what I think of when I think of like free speech at the Thanksgiving table.
Totally, Dave. So I just want to share with people, Dave is actually literally my mentor. Like literally, we meet every 2 weeks. And if it frankly were not for Dave, truly, I'm not entirely sure that this book would even be on the shelves right now. Dave literally helped to get this book published, by helping to make introductions. So thank you for that. And so Dave, as an author and business person, mentors me, and I, as a clinical psychologist, want to say to Dave, I think he deserves an honorary therapist degree, because what you just described there really is reflective listening. It's a technique in my book. So thanks for that. And the reflective listening technique, I think, is pretty much oftentimes credited with the Gottmans from couples therapy. And one of the things that the Gottmans also said that I put into my book that you might find interesting, and this is why that technique that you just laid out there is so helpful, is that for many people, when we get heated, when somebody says something that, as you said, we get into kind of a reactive heated mode, when our heart rate goes above 100 beats per minute, we are literally not cognitively able to comprehend things in the same way that we would otherwise, right? And so I think you're exactly right that for many people, if it be, say, something about talking about their feelings about Roe versus Wade being overturned, whether it be their feeling are positive or negative, if they bring that up and things get heated, people start talking at each other and literally not understanding what the other person is even saying. So what you did there is just to simply even reflect back what the person said, which slows the conversation down. And just on a cognitive level, even, is incredible. But it also shows the other person that you really respect them and that you care about understanding who they are, which is so huge. I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's really so profound. So I think Dave is frozen. I'm not sure.
I was frozen. Free speech and free Wi-Fi.
Yes. Well, did you hear what I had said to you? Because you're not frozen now. But
I heard a lot of it, and I appreciate the honorary therapist degree.
Okay, so Dave has frozen again. So I'm going to add Shamika Michelle in here. Shamika, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I do. So you are on, obviously, with me and with Dave Kerpen, but he's frozen right now. But
Okay.
he might kick back in at any moment. But Shamika Michelle, I am so glad that you are here. You, frankly, could give free speech lessons to all of us. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I felt so honored. And let me tell you that I actually did cut the bull last night with Charles and Will. And I said, are you all a part of Dr. Chloe's stream tomorrow about her book? And they were like, no. And I said, oh, I felt so honored.
No, yeah, I wish I had invited them. I think we lost Dave, but that's okay. But Shamika, I am super excited to have you here because, like I said, I truly feel like you could give free speech lessons to all of us. So let me ask you a few questions about how you handle free speech, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to put a couple questions at you and you can maybe mix them together, answer whichever way you put them together. Um, One is how is free speech handled at your Thanksgiving dinner table? Like, can they mix it up and talk about whatever they want, or do people have rules about no politics? And then number two is, have you always been outspoken or did you go on a journey?
So I will say that typically my family, we get together and there's usually about 50 of us at Thanksgiving. But this year is going to be a different experience because some things happened in the family and we aren't getting together as a large group. But my great uncle, who just turned 97, invited us to come have dinner with him, and he's in an assisted living facility. So this year, instead of being really concerned about maybe my freedom of speech and what I'm going to say, I'm more concerned about seeing a bunch of old people eating with food in their mouths, talking with food in their mouths. This year is going to be a bit different, but typically at our Thanksgiving dinner, because we know each other and we've grown up together and we've literally had this big Thanksgiving for as long as I can remember as a child, we typically just say whatever. But I will say, for someone like myself who talks politics a lot, I don't typically like to talk politics when I get with my family because that's my opportunity to just leave that world behind and just be who I am, or just, enjoy family. But my family will tell you there's nothing that I hold back on. My cousin just called me a couple of days ago because we were texting in the group chat and I was being Shamika and I was saying exactly what I wanted to say. And she picked up the phone and called me and said, "Can you stop?"
And what'd you say?
I just laughed because I knew it's like I instinctively knew she would be the cousin to call me and say, "Shamika, you're doing Shamika." And she said she was just laughing, like, "Can you stop? This is who you are." And so my family, they know me. Like, nobody tried to go back and forth with me in the text. Nobody got upset. I think everybody was saying, this is who Shamika is. And with my family, I feel that I'm most able to actually be who I am. So I appreciate that. I think I've always been very outspoken. There were times that I do feel as if I would share the way that I felt, and my mom would maybe punish me for it. Like if I felt she wasn't spending enough time with me, she would punish me, I feel like, in a way that maybe she would think I wouldn't say, "Mom, you aren't spending enough time with me anymore." And but it's like something that I can't get rid of. No matter how much I try to want to hold back, or how much I think, let me think about what I'm saying and process it, how this may land on someone else. It just comes very natural for me to just be who I am. I'm most comfortable that way.
But so that's interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm glad to know that your cousin wasn't really saying, "Can you stop?" Like, "Please stop." She was just
Right.
joking around. So that's great.
Yes.
But you said that just now, you said as much as you try to sometimes, tell yourself to hold back or to think about what you're saying, that, it's just not who you are. I actually think of you as somebody that is outspoken, but not somebody who speaks without thinking. Like you don't.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. You seem to me, like I've never seen you kind of like, act the fool, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like where
Yes.
people sometimes it's almost like I don't know, you just seem to me like you have opinions and you'll say them, but that's different than people that just feel like they're running their mouth and there's no coherence about what they're saying.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No, I'm very thoughtful about what I'm going to say. I just sometimes I try to word it in a way that may be more palatable to people who aren't used to me. But no matter how much I try to do that, it's like I can't. So I'm very thoughtful about what I'm saying and making sure that it's something worth hearing, making sure that it's peppered with wisdom and uh, kindness. But because of there's this, I think I have a gift of speech or this ability to write and catch people's attention. Sometimes that catches people off guard or they're off put by it and they don't really know how to receive me. And I have friends that sometimes have to apologize for me to say, she wasn't trying to be mean, or that's just her. And she, she's very loving, because sometimes it'll be off-putting to people. I think because we are so used to people lying that when they tell the truth, we don't understand all the time how to take it. People say they want the truth, but it's like that old saying, you can't handle the truth. And I think so many people are just used to wearing a mask and pretending and saying things that are politically correct, that when someone actually maybe touches a place in them that, oh, I would have said that, or I was thinking that, but, didn't want to say it, it's a different experience.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so I was writing down a note or two while you were speaking because there was a lot there. And, you said like, well, I try to, stop and, think how to speak kindly. But I was thinking, just what you said is that the truth is kindness. Like it's not kindness. It's not truly a safe space if people are not telling you what they really think. That's more of a landmine situation, right? Like
Mm.
where you don't really kind of know where things are. But I also wanted to ask you about something that you said a few minutes ago, which is you said, and I totally get it since you talk so much about politics, like literally for a living all the time, that
Right.
when you're, relaxing with family, that you don't necessarily want to like have a big political dialogue. However, I have a question about that because one of the things that I did when I was writing my book is research the root meaning of the word politics. And you
Mhm.
probably already know this, but like it just means public life. It just means our shared space. And so I feel like even people who say like, well, we're not going to talk about politics, or I don't want to talk about politics, it's almost impossible to actually really avoid discussing anything that doesn't touch upon our values
Mhm.
about, the world around us. So, and somebody actually messaged me last night on social media. He was reading my book and he was saying that he felt like a lot of times people will say that they don't want to talk about politics, and then they'll make these statements that are needling to people politically without realizing it. Like they might
Mhm.
say, well, I don't want to talk about politics. And then they'll say something like, I just can't stand, people that don't respect my abortion care rights or, whatever. And they're like, but I don't want to talk about politics. And they don't realize that they're being political. And
Mhm.
my heart kind of goes out to people on both sides of the equation because I just I don't think people realize that politics is everywhere. It's what gets taught in our school systems. If you have an
Mhm.
opinion about climate change, if you have an opinion about immigration or about the laws about crime in your community, like unless you're just going to talk with people strictly about their super duper personal lives and not in any way connect with the world outside, you're
Mhm.
going to be talking about politics, right?
Right. With my family, though, I can tell you, I think the oldest living relative, my great uncle that I was saying I'm going to have Thanksgiving dinner with, he just turned 97. So there are a lot of times, because we've been having this Thanksgiving together for so long, we will just sit around and talk about old times, listening to old stories. And I guess there are instances where maybe politics could, or does come up, but it's really glossed over. So typically, there's not a debate on who to vote for or
Mhm.
how we feel about certain politicians in office, because I can be very vocal about that. Of course, that's what I do for a living at times. I travel the country and I speak and I push a certain political opponent or whatever. So I can be very vocal about that. But typically, if I'm in a space with family, they'll know exactly who I vote for. I mean, last Thanksgiving, I wore a Thanksgiving turkey with Trump on there. So they know exactly like where I stand on specific issues, but it's just not a combative space when it comes to family. Like there are other times when I may be around a group of people who maybe say, I don't know much about politics, or I don't want to talk about politics. And it does come up, and I do have to like stand flat-footed on what I believe and what I think and how I feel about certain things. But with family, we just, for some reason, I think because there's a knowing of who I am, and maybe I don't want to get into that with her because, you know, I may not come out on the good end. I might lose the debate. I don't know. We just don't have those deep conversations that typically go to that. Like nobody's going to bring up abortion at Thanksgiving. Typically, they aren't going to bring up immigration at Thanksgiving. A lot of times they won't bring up, you know, any medical thing. And I think you know what I'm talking about that may be related to politics.
You
They
can
just
say
won't bring it
anything
up.
you mean. Yeah. Do you mean like COVID stuff or do you mean
Yes,
trans
you know,
stuff?
I know how social media can be
Yeah.
very active.
No, I'm done censoring, Shamika. So say anything you
Okay.
want.
Okay, good. I say what I want on my platform,
Please.
but when I come to someone else's, yeah, the COVID vaccine, for instance, you know, that typically won't come up. And if it does, it's with people who have a like mind. You know, I can have that conversation with the cousin who called me and said, you know, would you just stop? We went on to have a very deep conversation about religion and about the COVID vaccine. And so we will have some of those, but a lot of times in the larger setting, we are really just laughing, talking about old times, maybe things that other people would find silly just
Mhm.
because we've been together for so long.
Well,
We
that's
have a very
beautiful.
tight knit family.
That's beautiful. That's actually one of the things that it kind of reminds me of a little technique from the book to share, which is that for if you're gonna not you, Shamika, I know you probably never have the problem of having to go to somebody and say, I've been holding back, but I want to come out of the closet and tell you like what I really think about stuff. Because there are some people who have that, and then they feel like they're being really fake with everybody in their life, and they're like, I want to put a stop to this. And so they
But
decide they're gonna share with people.
I do though.
You do.
I actually just had that situation happen because I've been in a relationship for like 2 years, and it was something that I hadn't really been very open about. And
Mhm.
so I told my boss, like, listen, I haven't been completely transparent about this, but I'm actually in a relationship, you know. And it was like, okay, because I don't know, for me, I just felt like I wasn't talking about it enough. And I didn't feel free enough to talk about it because I was thinking, is there going to be a situation where people feel like I've changed because I'm in love, or, you know, so I just conveniently didn't say a lot about it. So there has been a situation where I felt like I wasn't being completely transparent. Not necessarily that I was hiding it, but for me, because I didn't feel like I could just gush about how I was really feeling on the inside, that I wasn't being completely transparent. So
So
there's
even
that.
Shamika Michelle occasionally may have that. But
Yes.
the reason I mention it is because of what you were saying before that, sometimes you all just, get so caught up in the fun stuff, which is great, just talking about old times. And so one of the techniques I suggest in the book is that if somebody is going to have that come out of the closet moment with somebody where they share about some viewpoint that they've been holding back to the point where they're feeling inauthentic, I sometimes suggest that it can be helpful to come up with like a few topics that you can steer the conversation towards once that quick come out of the closet conversation is done, so that you don't feel like you have to dwell on, this issue than to be like,
Mhm.
by the way, I wanted to hear about how your plans for that, cruise are coming, or, whatever happened with your new garden or the new guy in your life or whatever. So it's nice to have sometimes those pivot topics handy. Otherwise, people get stuck in black and white sometimes where they're like, I either have to be focused on making sure I say it all or I'm
Yes.
holding it all back. And like learning how to do both is actually is a big skill that comes, I think, naturally to you, Shamika, Michelle. So thanks for sharing that here with us. Well, we're coming towards the end of our time. I promised I wouldn't keep you, and I'm actually getting ready to wrap up the stream, but I love that I got to finish it out with you truly because you are, in my opinion, the queen of free speech. So thank you for
Oh,
that.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I just admire you. I love what you're doing. I actually love that a psychologist, someone who has actually studied it, is putting it out there and letting people know how important free speech actually is. And you have the credentials to back it up. I think that's important and it's necessary, because for some people, they won't move or honor it without those credentials. So I want to just say thank you for taking the time to actually put what you know into a book. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to tell everyone about it
Aw.
because I think it's necessary.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it felt good for me to be able to share. I wanted people to have a way to answer back if,
Mhm.
somebody tries to tell them, well, you can't express that viewpoint because it could endanger somebody's mental health or whatever, to be like, well, you know what? Actually, being our authentic selves is actually better for us
Yeah.
cognitively, emotionally, and socially. So I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that you joined today, and I'm thankful for your very kind words. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you encouraged me. Once I knew that it was mentally better for me to have freedom of speech, I felt like I could just say whatever because my mental health is important as well.
Amen. Amen to that. Well, I hope one of these days we get to have a Thanksgiving sometime in person and say hello. But otherwise, I'll be wishing a happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. And I hope things go well at that place where you mentioned.
Yes, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you. You too. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody listening. Take care, everybody. Thanks. Bye.